Vamos a retomar a partir de este momento el bloque 4. Bloque 4 que va a ser de una participación transversal. Perfecto. Ubicamos entonces nuestros auriculares. El tema siguiente es el riesgo de licuefacción, determinante y relevancia en América Latina, con nuestro participante Mr. Thorge Scheel, Head of Section and África, Medio Oriente y también Latinoamérica y el Caribe. All Marine Business en Munich Re. Thorge Scheel se unió a Munich Re en 1996 como aprendiz. Después de sus estudios de administración de empresas, comenzó a especializarse como suscriptor de Marine de Lloyd's, con especial énfasis en P&I y cascos. Habla inglés y español con fluidez. En el marco de su deber, trabajó para las diferentes organizaciones internacionales de Munich Re, en Canadá, Malasia y desde 2008 durante 2 años en México. Actualmente vive con su familia en Munich. Desde el 2014, Thorge Scheel es jefe de la división de Marine para los mercados de África, Oriente Medio, América Latina y el Caribe, incluyendo la oficina de Marine de Munich Re en Bogotá, Colombia. Bienvenido, Mr. Thorge Scheel.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see so many of you here. I guess there will be more coming. First of all, I want to thank the organization of Alsum for giving us room to speak at. Leonardo, I see you now. Okay. Hello. Thank you very much. And most importantly, I think for this block, it is also important to thank the translators. Thank you very much. You will have a hard job over the next hour and a half or so to make room for us two here. And thank you for that. What I would also like to remind you is that we, from Munich Re, we've put these questions up. You find the cards on your tables in front of you. If you want to fill them, please. And this afternoon, we will announce the winner of a GoPro if you answer these questions correctly. So, without further ado, I will start. As you can see, my topic here is a bit different to the one that is on the slide. We thought that with the recent events, with the recent NatCat events, it's important to put them into perspective and give you a bit of an update on where we are with the losses. So, first of all, there's a saying, nobody quotes the insurance insider, but everyone does. So I've basically, over the last couple of weeks, we looked at some of the announcements that we have seen in the Insider. So Mapfre cat bill may reach 200 billion. Mexico earthquake insured losses won't top 1.2 billion, says RMS. HIM, which some of you remember in 2005, we had KRW with Katrina, Rita, Wilma. We now have HIM with another N to it because we now have Nate. So the worst ever cat year. Chubb says the Harvey Irma loss up to 1.6 billion, where I heard yesterday that the marine loss, Andrew, is not as much. So, but that's the news from the Insider. Here, first of all, the first numbers that we have heard is 190 billion for the cat losses. Lloyd sees 4.5 billion impact from Harvey and Irma. This is without Maria. And if you take the figures from Lloyd's alone, I think it illustrates quite nicely how large this loss is. Yeah? Lloyd's has an EPI of roughly 28 billion. And the gross loss is estimated of these now 3 losses of HIM is estimated to be around 16 billion gross. Net, that will probably be 6 billion. So we're talking significant figures, really significant figures. given the profit of Lloyd's last year, in 2016, was about 1.7, 1.6 billion. So, will this be a capital event? I think it will be a capital event, because insurance companies will need to invest capital to pay the losses, and it will not only sustain from the profits. Turn in the reinsurance market, I think we're talking about this all the time, the amount of times we have talked to clients, brokers, friends about this. It's very obvious that there is a turn. Then RMS now puts the insured Maria loss at 15 to 30 billion. Yeah? We heard Puerto Rico, less than 10% of the people in Puerto Rico have power. Imagine, more than 90% are without power in Puerto Rico now, and that is 2 weeks after loss. Score the Mexico losses, we have Lancashire, we have the Nate loss at 500 million, we have the AIG forecast to 3.1 billion for the Q3. So Nate, another person says it's 1.5 to 3 billion. And then the last one, which is also for us interesting here on the marine side, Norwegian Hull Club notifies reinsurers of $105 million sun sail loss. If we see all this, there's a lot of money involved. There are a lot of billions, millions, one gets them all confused. I'll try to put them together here. So, we had some calm years, but now the hurricanes have made an impressive comeback. We had Harvey as a Cat 4, where they say it's about 25 to 35 billion, which is RMS figure. We have Irma, where we have a figure of 35 to 55. If you have other sources, they go up to 80 billion. Yeah, which I think is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. How can you, as a modeling agency, have such a range? The range is just, and then if we think that on the modeling side, on the property side, we very much concentrate and rely on the modeling of these RMS, AIR, and all the different agencies. So that will be interesting. I find that really staggering how far these ranges are. Then we've got Mexico earthquake, 1.2 billion, see how that goes. Then we've got Maria, 15 to 30 billion, and now Nate coming in with people guessing it's between 10 and 15. So, all in all, we're talking of losses of 100 to 150 billion. According to the sources that we have seen and what we have heard from the news. So here, try to put that into perspective. What does that mean from a historical point of view? The history here says Katrina was 74 billion insured losses. If we now fly in the 3 big hurricanes that we have seen, we see that from a US perspective alone, it makes it into the top 10 and an impressive number that we see only in 2017 here. So, you see there are some observations, implications, you can share them or you don't. But I think it's important that we are aware that the accumulation control is essential also for our yacht and cargo business. We need to know where our risks are and how big our risks are. And of course the emergency action plans also are very important. So if we add all these losses up, I've put a big question mark there. What does that mean for us now? Is it a market-changing event? Insurance Insider, some say yes, some say no. I think it definitely will be a market-changing event. Munich Re has not yet published any information. Some of you might question what is Munich Re's view on this and what is our loss. I really don't know. I really don't know. We will announce our figures towards the end of the week, beginning of next week, and then we will know more what our loss will be for the storms. So if we now only look at Latin America, the picture is even worse. So we fly in again our 3 losses, and we see that within the top 4, we have 3 this year. So, one very important message that I would like to give today is that the net cat exposure needs to be considered in the risk assessment, in the pricing, and also when talking to our clients to make them aware that we are exposed in Latin America to hurricanes and to net cat events. So again, if we add them all up, I mean, it's all, of course, we're not certain what this loss will be. But you can see quite clearly that the graph is going over the top there. And this year will definitely be the worst year for Latin America in terms of net cat losses. We have seen, and I'm going to look into a graph. I will show you a little graph that I've seen over the weekend from the energy market. The energy market, if you take the premium of 2012 of the energy market at 100%, they have given reductions every year, 10%, 5%, 20%, 5%, 20%, end up at roughly 61% now of the, say, 100% premium if we take 2012 as the indicator. If we want to go back to 2012 standards, we need an increase of roughly 100%. So just to make you aware, a 10% increase doesn't really get us anywhere. If we want to achieve proper ratios and proper loss ratios, just the awareness that we have huge nat cat losses that are hurting us requires such action, from my point of view. So when you say, well, this was all Caribbean, what do we have to do here? Maybe in the south, west, wherever. Well, there are other peligros in this part of the world. So if we look at these dots here, we of course have a lot of windstorms in the Caribbean area, but of course we had in Chile the earthquake, which was also a marine event, and we have other landslide events like in Venezuela, when we had a landslide that fell onto a ports and terminals area and caused a marine loss there. So we are prone to losses in Latin America, which if you take these dots and put them on top of each other, you see a trend. And to be honest, the trend here is not our friend. The trend is that basically from 1980 on, we have seen tripled losses on the net cat side. So, do we need a net cat loading on our pricing? Primary as well as reinsurance? Yes, we do. And we should include this. And we should put ourselves into the awareness that there is a necessity to require net cat prices of our clients. So, unfortunately, and we as a global reinsurer, we see the whole world and we see the losses in the whole world. Yeah, it's not a singular event. For us, it's important. We are a global company, therefore we are diversified throughout the world. If we only look into this year, here in the far right corner, we got Cyclone Debbie this year. Yeah, huge yacht losses as well. And if you go further, we have the Thai floods. We have this wonderful boat on a house in Japan. in 2011, huge hull and cargo losses. Just recently, last week, we had a storm in Durban, where the MSC, the name slipped, blocked the harbour in Durban because it ripped loose during a storm. And you see the yachts also that were damaged during the Durban windstorm. We had the hurricanes Him, as mentioned. We had a submarine in Chile that during the earthquake and after the earthquake was damaged. We have the earthquake in Mexico, and of course we had Hurricane Sandy as a mega event for marine as well. I think everyone, or most of you, have seen photos of Napa Valley after the wildfires now. Again, wildfires, you can consider that as a NatCat event. And that is respecting the last 7 years, if you take Chile as, say, the oldest loss here. So I would like to put 3 questions up. One is, do we charge sufficient NatCat premium for the risk that we're writing? Do we have sufficient insight into a marine accumulation? Do we really know what we're covering? Is the marine bank for Latin America large enough to pay NatCat losses? Those are questions that I don't want to have an answer now. Maybe I don't have an answer for you now, but it's something I would like to discuss with you. Me and my team, we're very open to discuss this, and I think it's important that you also on the primary side, as well as on the reinsurance side, as well as on the broking side, have the awareness that NatCat losses have happened, and they are hurting us. Yes, that's important. And basically that finishes the first part of my presentation.
Thank you very much. ¿Hay alguna pregunta de nuestro auditorio? Para Mr. Thorge Scheel. Seguimos entonces. Invitamos a nuestro siguiente... ¿Sí? ¿Continuamos? Ah, perfecto. Adelante. Sí, sí, sí. Adelante.
So, I would like to hear it. Who has ever heard of cargo liquefaction? Okay, not many. Not many. Cargo liquefaction is an ongoing concern, and it's also an ongoing concern for us in Latin America. And I will tell you a bit what cargo liquefaction is. It's a very technical subject, very different to the one that what I did before on the NatCat side. Very technical one, which involves insurance, which involves technical know-how, and I will see to make it as easy as possible, because I'm far away from being a technical person. I'm a reinsurance underwriter by trade, and therefore I've tried to make it easy that I understand it, and I hope everyone gets it, what we want to do with cargo liquefaction. So why is this a hot topic? Why is liquefaction coming up again? You see this mega ship here. We're talking about the Stella Daisy. Stella Daisy is a converted tanker, single hull tanker. When they were not allowed to call anymore, it was converted into VLOC, a very large ore carrier with a deadweight ton of 266,000. It's huge. If you just as a comparison, Panamax is 60 to 100,000 roughly. So everyone that has been with us last year at the locks of Miraflores in Panama, the Panamax, the largest that can go through there, 100,000. So this is 2.5 times the size. So really big. It was loaded with iron ore cargo, and I hope the translation works, because iron ore cargo is more or less mud. Yeah, you fill mud into a ship. And the mud has iron ore contents, and at a later stage it will be basically refined into iron ore. So this mud is put into the ship, and after some time we have a potential liquefaction. You see, the ship started in Brazil, and just outside Uruguay it sank. There are two different possibilities why it sank. Sister ships of Stella Daisy had some cracks in the hull, and so it is assumed that there was also a crack in the hull, and that's why the ship sank. But the other possibility, and it's very possible, that there was also a cargo liquefaction involved. And I will tell you in a second what that is. Edward Benavides just sent an email around. This G-Captain IMO issued new warning about seed cargoes. So it's a very recent topic, 2017. And so this loss happened in April 2017. And I thought it was important just to make you aware of what liquefaction is all about. It's a bit of loss history here. We're talking in the last 8 years, we have lost 120 sailors and 11 vessels, which most of them, we assume, are due to have sunk due to liquefaction. One doesn't really know, because most of them sink and are gone. I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 meters deep at sea, so you don't really know the cause, but the evidence shows that there's probably liquefaction. We remember this lady, the bulk Jupiter here, because we will go through a little case study later to see how the bulk Jupiter sank and how this came about. So can we see the video, please? So this video will show us a view from the helicopter that rescued the people from the Trans-Summer. Here, nobody died, so they were able to rescue everyone. But you see the pictures together with the video. The ship has this list here, this unrecoverable list, and just turns around. I will show you later that it takes 14 minutes from the ship to be destabilized until it sinks. 14 minutes. And that's why so many sailors die, because they just can't get out. So, I have 6 technical takeaways for you. The 6 technical takeaways. One is, the shipper must comply with the so-called IMSBC code. The IMSBC code is the International Maritime Solid Bulk Cargo Code. That was issued some time ago in '65, as it says here, and it applies to all bulk cargoes that is shipped. There's one word there, the master. The master should ensure. I will always come back to this master now, because at the end of the day, the master on the ship is the CEO, the CFO, the COO of his company, of his ship. So he has to ensure that all this is complied with. And the IMSBC code, there's a copy, and the P&I clubs, they do that quite nicely. There's a nice copy of the IMSBC code with all the different rules and regulations that come with it, and that has to be on board of every ship. So, loading requirements. What are the loading requirements? Loading requirements is basically when you start loading very fast, and you can imagine, I don't know whether you have seen loading operations in a port, especially of bulk cargo. It's absolutely impressive, the pace with which it goes. And what normally happens, they drop the cargo from the hold, and it drops 20 meters down, and it cracks onto the bottom of the boat. that might not hurt when you do it once, but if you do it 1,000 times, the hull will have issues. So it is important to be aware that the loading is done correctly and is done in a proper way. Distribution of the holes must be considered, again, very important to keep that in mind. So takeaway, correct loading is essential for the voyage. You have to comply with the IMSBC code and you have to load correctly. Does make sense. So the types of solid bulk cargo that we have Group A, Group B, and Group C. So Group A is cargo that potentially liquefies. Group B is when there are chemical substances involved. And Group C is all the rest. So the warning that came out, if you remember on the G-Captain news, the warning that came out was regarding a Group C cargo. Group C cargo, it says in the IMSBC code, you can do whatever you want, so to speak, it's not dangerous. But bauxite cargo, and the case that we will see later is also in respect of bauxite cargo, did damage, and at the end of the day, sunk the ship. It says here some minerals can be Group A and B, but it's just for us to keep in mind. The IMSBC code is basically differentiating into these three. So, more technical information, just a few words so that you know what we're talking about here. We're basically talking about a moisture content. How wet is the cargo? And that then defines whether a cargo can be loaded or can't be loaded. So that, of course, is important to establish that prior to departure. When you do that, when you're at sea, it's too late. So you need to do that before, and the captain needs to do this before. So how can you test this? There are very easy testing methods, and I will show you a couple. There's the table test, which is basically you put the cargo on a table, that starts moving, and if the cargo liquefies like you see it on the right here, you should stop loading. Yeah? That's one possibility, but you need the table. The table, a lot of vessels don't have the table, so what they do, they start with a can test, the so-called can test. And can we start with where it fails, please? Is there one? So you see the can, the mud basically is filled into the can, and then they have to smash it 20 times on the ground. So unfortunately there's no forward button, because you have to do that 20 times now. That's why we're not going to watch the video where it doesn't fail, because that's pretty boring. But here you can imagine that all that cargo now being inside the hold, and the whole ship is vibrating. You've got waves coming in left, right, center. It goes up and down, up and down. It's basically exactly what is happening in this can. And it does look quite solid over there in the other one. In here you will have surface water. See how wet it is? So this cargo, definitely don't load it. So what a master should do, if he sees that it's basically floating out of the can, get a surveyor on board. Stop loading. Don't load the cargo. Because you'll put your life at risk and the life of your seafarers. So what are the problem areas of liquefaction? Very important, remote areas. We are in remote locations, somewhere in Indonesia, somewhere in Brazil, in the Amazonas area, where they're taking the mud out of the ground and putting it there. What do we have? Lots of rain. Torrential rain. If it rains the whole time, the mud will get wet. Makes a lot of sense. You don't have local surveyors. You have problems getting surveyors on board. You have governments that don't want surveyors to come on board because they get some money through the back door for not letting surveyors on board. So a lot of fighting back and forth, and if your master doesn't resist, you're in problem. You have got problems. So the country of origin plays a significant role. You see, the countries here, they're pretty much around the equator, besides Ukraine, that's not really around the equator, but India, Philippines, Indonesia, this is where most of the losses happen, and Brazil, of course, now with the stellar daisy. So if we put these 6 takeaways together, it gives underwriters quite a nice overview of what you can consider. These are my takeaways, and I think that's pretty much it to know what liquefaction is all about, at least for us. So we go through a little case study. Bulk Jupiter, Handymax bulker, so not that big. You see 56,000 tons, so 60,000 the Panamax starts. Well, it looks quite big, eh? It's not old, built in 2006, and the incident that we're going to look at is in 2014, going on 2015. So what happened? We had rain in that area where they were loading. And the ship came in December 2014. The Bulk Jupiter arrived in Malaysia, and they started loading. But it was all wet. You see here the graph on the right side. You see the record rain that they had. And the cargo was just super wet. So they continued loading, and then on 30th of December, they left the harbor. There was a weather warning. They still left the harbor, and it happened what had to happen. Just the chief cook survived. And you see here, it was 6:40 on the 2nd of January. 6:40, there was a general alarm. And at 6:54, the distress signal went out, started rolling, and we had this unrecoverable list. Master and chief cook left the ship, and only the chief cook was later recovered. And all the others died. So you see what also happened on the Stellar Daisy. It broke in two. That's what they can say. And here as well, the Bulk Jupiter also broke in two. You see here on the right side is a sister ship, which called the port right after this, how wet the cargo was. I mean, you can see it with your quite easily. That shouldn't be loaded. So this is a summary of the incident, and we don't have to go through it in detail, but the most important thing is the master had a lack of understanding. And if that happens, that's bad. You have to have a master who understands what this is all about. So the final conclusion here, the probability of structural failure as a singular causal event is low. Again, similarities to Stellar Daisy. It can be concluded that either liquefaction or free surface effect, which was something that we saw with CAM, induced an unrecoverable list. There can only be very few circumstances that cause a vessel to capsize so quickly, with minimal warning. In reference to the composition of cargo, the probability of liquefaction occurring is considered very high. So, of course, somebody has to pay for all this. That's unfortunately the insurance industry. And just some pictures which again illustrate how wet this cargo is. If it is that wet, just stop loading. So if we start, what actually happens when we have an incident like this? We have the damaged vessel, we have the damaged cargo, we have the crew that is injured, we have a pollution issue, and sometimes this happens right after they go off berth, the ship capsizes. So you have that in a harbor, and of course you have trouble of wreck removal and or salvage. So who are the different parties involved? We've got, of course, the ship owner. We've got the charterer. Most of the time these ships are chartered out to a charterer. So that they are involved. We've got the shipper and other parties that own the cargo. Maybe banks who put out a letter of credits and so on. So who is at the end the one that pays? It's the voyage charterer, is the charterer that pays. And how does that work? We basically have our three covers here, which is so the standard. We've got our cargo cover, we've got our hull cover, and the P&I, which work nicely together. So if we look at the cargo, first of all, we've got an all-risk cover. If we've got ICAA, which has the exclusion of inherent vice or unseaworthiness, but how to prove if the ship is in 1,000-meter depth? It's very difficult to get down there, so you can't really do this. So there's no evidence. The hull cover is an all-risk cover, so first of all, the hull insurance will have to pay. But there's the right for recourse. And here, this is where the P&I clubs come in. The P&I clubs, or the fixed premium providers that offer this cover on the charterer side as well as on the ship owner's side. It's named perils, but we have basically with the clubs especially, they will not restrict any cover because they are mutual and they are there for their clients. So they're very service driven, so they issue a lot of things. You have these risk management measures, they're publishing circulars, there are recommendations. As said, the master will get, from every P&I club, will get a big book, especially on this subject, into his cabinet, and he will be able to attend this. Again, you can see here some nice pictures of this guy here, basically shipping water. So some heads of cover on the P&I side, we have these heads of cover. Where do they come in? We've got cargo liability, pollution liability, damage to hull and wreck liability are basically the heads of cover that are affected if you go for recourse from a hull and cargo side. So, again, takeaways for underwriters. So when you're underwriting a bulk cargo risk, and you know it's group A or B, you should always warrant that your client adheres to the IMSBC code. In case of doubt, involve a surveyor. If you have a facultative account, for example, where you are involved a bit closer than on a single voyage basis, examine the cargo before. If you know it's this area where the problem lies, involve a surveyor. Raising risk awareness of ship owners, charterers, crews is absolutely crucial, and qualification is necessary. The masters have to know what they're allowed to do or not to do. And then most of the cost will end up with the P&I club, be it the charterer or the P&I club itself. So you as underwriters, you should ask, who is the P&I club? Is that one of the mutuals of the international group? Is that a fixed premium provider, a reliable P&I club? This is something that you should be asking for when insuring this trade. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Damas y caballeros, quizá